Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Shaheen Ghadir, and I'm an expert in the world of fertility, the area that I love and have deep passion for. I have helped thousands of people around the globe start their beautiful families, and in this podcast, The Fertile Life, I interview guests about their paths to parenthood and dive into discussions around how the road to becoming a parent shapes us. Also looking at the balance between family and many responsibilities life demands from us. And we'll be discussing the challenges that we encounter along the way. Through insightful conversations, I hope to create a guide for listeners in all stages of life and break many stigmas often associated with fertility. We will also share all the health and wellness tips my guests and I have learned over the years. Follow along as I take you on a journey towards the fertile life. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's make this our official start. Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Ghadir, and I am here with one of my favorite people, Rachel Zeilic. Rachel and I go back, and we have had some amazing conversations, but I thought it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to have her on the Fertile Life podcast because her fertility has been an important part of her life, something that she discussed with me, something that she was open about. And I thought it'd be amazing for our audiences both to be able to hear what we have to talk about, and for everyone who's watching this podcast and listening to it both, have an ability to get a lot of that value out of what we're going to be discussing today. Rachel, one of the things I love to do is have everyone kind of introduce themselves and say the most important things about yourself that you want everyone to know.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm a mom. I have a gorgeous 20-month-old son called August. He's a handful, and I'm currently pregnant, 15 weeks pregnant with my second.
Yay.
Also a boy, so pray for me.
We'll be talking again then.
Exactly. Wish me luck. I am sort of an OG in influencer marketing. I've been working in that space for about 15 years before they were even called influencers. It was bloggers back then. And interestingly, I've always kind of been on the brand side, but a lot of my closest friends, as we, all came up in the industry together, are a lot of the OG influencers. So it's been so cool to see that industry evolve from both sides through the eyes of my friends who are the influencers and myself working always on the brand side. And I love it. I love my job because there's always something new to learn. Podcasting didn't exist, 5 years ago? Maybe it did. I should fact check, but everyone's got a podcast. The newest thing, obviously, we got to get on Clubhouse. The next conversation we do has got to be on Clubhouse.
I know. And I have an account on Clubhouse. I just need some assistance learning how to use Clubhouse, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
We're going to do it. And this is what I love about my job is it feels like every week there's something completely new to learn.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's it. You want what else?
No, you need to say you're from Sydney is the most important. That's one of my favorite things about you is she's from one of my favorite cities in the entire world, Sydney, Australia.
Exactly. I'm from Sydney and I've been in LA about 8 years.
So I just wanted to say Rachel truly is one of the originals in her industry, no longer bloggers. It's all about influencers. She knows everything about everyone who's important. She knows everyone in this town, and she's always connecting and always passing on really good messages. And that's what I really love. When we did our Instagram live and we were talking about fertility and what to do, I can't tell you after that talk, there were so many questions that came to me and people that said, if Rachel uses Dr. Ghadir, I'm automatically using Dr. Ghadir. And people having the confidence in her because she's one of those smart women in town, one of those smart people that people trust that she's done her research and that she's done really well in terms of looking into things when she's moving forward. So I want to talk a little bit about your personal, I don't want to say struggles, it's not a struggle, but path to parenthood. It hasn't been a struggle at all, but how you planned number one, the things we did for number two, and the things that we did kind of to move you forward. And you quickly called me and said it worked and I'm pregnant again.
Exactly. So I probably have a little bit of a less conventional journey, perhaps, to parenthood compared to some of your other guests or patients even. I was extremely lucky with my first pregnancy. We decided to try once, almost as like a joke, as like we were on vacation and it was like a funny thing to do, a kind of romantic thing to do. Completely forgot that I had even done that. And then fast forward, 3 weeks later, it's like, oof, I'm pregnant. And I think whilst I was obviously so blessed to get pregnant so quickly, the flip side of that was like, I found it truly very mentally challenging. When I look back, and we can discuss the differences between a second and a first pregnancy. Physically, they've been almost identical, but mentally they could not have been more different. Even though I was totally ready for a baby, I just didn't think that I was. And I had so many struggles and, in a way wasted so much time in my first pregnancy, just worrying and worrying about how my life was going to change and my identity was going to change and my body was going to change and all of these things. And now, when my friends are pregnant for the first time, I'm like, it's such a waste of time to worry about those things because it's not like anything you can ever imagine having a kid, right? The highs are so much higher, the lows are so much lower, but it was truly the universe knew what I needed and really sent me that baby, even though I wasn't really planning for it.
I got to tell you something. The fact that you just gave some really good advice. I think like worrying and putting too much energy into the wrong places while pregnant is such a mistake. I don't know if it's one of those things that everyone has to go through, so then they can think about that afterwards. But if it's a piece of advice to give to someone, I think that's a really good piece of advice. You're going to do, if everything's fine and God willing, you don't have major complications, it's going to pass and you're going to do great. Putting excessive amounts of energy into worrying about everything, I think is actually unhealthy. I think it's actually unhealthy when you're pregnant, especially in the first trimester. I'm all about good energy, and I think good energy gets you really far while pregnant, and good things happen to people with good energy. I've always thought that, and it doesn't always happen that way, but in general speaking, bringing some good energy and good thought into a first trimester, second trimester, and especially going into delivery is, I think, the way to go. So I love that you brought that up, by the way.
I couldn't agree more. I think, well, two things. Firstly, I had been so aware of postnatal depression. That's something that gets talked about. But after I gave birth and, later on as I got more involved in this space and I learned more about like antenatal depression and anxiety. And certainly looking back, I think that's what was going on with me mentally in my first pregnancy. But again, like all topics, fertility, trying to conceive, mental health, everything in this area, there's just not enough good information. So thankfully we now have you doing a podcast and a lot more things coming up. But yeah, so mentally I was not in the best place my first pregnancy. I physically, aside from both pregnancies, I've had the most horrific morning sickness. Morning sickness is not even the right word for it. Is
it called all day sickness?
It's all day, it's all night. It's like, I swear a man made up the term morning sickness. It sounds so trivial. It's truly the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life is the constant nausea, debilitating nausea and vomiting that my first pregnancy lasted until around week 17 or 18. And I started to lose my mind around week 12 because everyone says that's when it's going to end. And it did not, but it ended eventually. And again, this time, whilst it's still very difficult, mentally it's easier knowing that like it will end. The first time I was so dramatic. I was like, oh, this is my life forever. I had a great life and all I do now is throw up. That's going to be my life forever.
If it makes you feel better, my mom tells me that with both my sister and myself, she was sick until the day she delivered.
Oof, that feel better.
No, I've heard about stories like this before. And when my mom said that was her, I saw a picture of her when she was like 7 months pregnant, still wearing her normal clothes. So and we came out, I guess, half decent. So I guess no comment, please, Rachel.
You're all right.
um,
So,
but
okay.
I did want to jump into something because you have been such a support for other people that have had struggles and have had questions, have had issues. And I want to kind of talk about that. You've referred me to so many of your friends that I've helped and who have been successful, whether it's for egg freezing, whether it's for IVF and getting pregnant. So I definitely want to talk about some of the things that we were really proactive that we did when you said to me, I may want to have another kid soon. And I want to just talk about some of those things. So whether it was super easy for people both times or just one time and not the other time, or both were struggles, there's some things that I wanted to go over that we did for you that I think everyone can learn from. Okay.
Absolutely. I think what's actually even interesting is how we got to that point, because I honestly, having had conceived easily, it wasn't even something that was sort of on my radar. And then we met through a panel that I was putting on. And as I learned so much more, I learned two things. Firstly, it's not a guarantee whatsoever. There's a lot of things, as you mentioned, that you want to do to set yourself up for success. And then secondly, I felt it was really important for someone who didn't necessarily have this huge infertility struggle to also talk about infertility or fertility struggles. Remember, after that panel, I came in and did the AMH test with you, really just because I wanted to normalize the idea of women proactively checking on that stuff. I think as a 35-year-old woman, my generation, we only ever hear these stories at the end of someone who's had a really big struggle. So we think to ourselves, okay, I'm going to put my career first. I'm going to start trying for a baby in my mid-30s, and then I'm going to wait, and I'm only going to talk to a fertility specialist if I have troubles conceiving after a couple of years. And after, you and I spoke and I learned so much from our IG Live, that just flipped on its head for me, where it's like, we are boss ass women. We handle the shit out of every other part of our lives. If having a child is a goal for us, why wouldn't we start proactively checking our levels even in our 20s? Why wouldn't we be thinking about these things, even if we knew we didn't want to have kids later? Why wouldn't we start thinking about them earlier? And so even though I understand it could have been controversial or not popular for someone who didn't necessarily have fertility struggles to talk about these things, I actually think it's so important. So it's a normalized conversation, the whole spectrum of experiences.
I'm going to use that line a lot. It's a normalized conversation to make this an accepted topic to discuss. And not only if you're in tears and sad behind closed doors and not talking about this to anyone, like many of the patients that I see. So normalizing the discussion is important. And I think that's a really important thing that I'm trying to get across, calling it the fertile life. Whether it's struggles with fertility, whether it is just using your fertility to proceed, and whether it's just normalizing it and making sure that everyone's aware of it. So when Rachel and I did our Instagram Live together, we started to talk about some testing that I think every woman in the world should do. A simple test called the AMH, which is the anti-Müllerian hormone, can be done on any day of the month. It does not have to be on day 2 or 3 of your cycle. Whether you're on birth control, have an IUD in, it can always be checked, and there's really no issue with it at all. So it's one of the simplest tests that we can do that allow us to be able to check and to see how fertile we are. So that's one thing, and one of the most important things that any woman can do. Rachel jumped into my office, I think was in and out of there in a couple of minutes with a quick blood draw, and I called her with the result and interpreted it with my knowledge of fertility to tell her how well she's doing in terms of her reserve of eggs. Luckily, she is very fertile, people. I just want everyone to know that she is very, very fertile. But whether it's knowing that you're very fertile or not knowing, I think is equally as important. For those people that learn that they're maybe not as fertile as they thought or hoped, I think it gives them power, because then you know to be proactive going forward, even if you were not trying, and not just putting this on the back burner and bringing it up to life and for discussion 3 years into trying.
Agreed. And I just think knowledge is power. And the earlier you know, the more options you have. So, even if that may be, say you start testing in your 20s and you see your levels going down, you can make the decision either, okay, maybe I'm going to start a family a little earlier than I had expected. Maybe I'm going to financially save up because I know that egg freezing and IVF may be in my future. And then I'm not going to have that financial stress and tough decisions later down the line. Or maybe I'm mentally going to explore whether I want to have children or I'm okay with not having children. But I couldn't agree more. I just think that knowledge is so important, and we need to destigmatize it being scary. We go for annual physical checkups. We go visit our regular OBs for pap smears and all of that. Like, let's just get in and start checking in and talking about our fertility. So we did that test, and then actually as a result of that test, which I wasn't expecting at all, I was kind of, didn't go in there with much expectations really, but we sort of found that I may or may not have had PCOS, correct? Because my levels were reading sort of almost a little too high.
When your AMH, which is the anti-Müllerian hormone, is a little too high, that means you have a lot of little eggs on your ovaries. And some women with polycystic ovary syndrome or PCOS actually have a very high AMH. Some women just have a very high AMH and don't have PCOS. PCOS is a syndrome and it's a spectrum. So some people are at the extreme minor edge of it, like Rachel, who really doesn't have many of the symptoms. And some women from like a mile away, as a reproductive endocrinology and infertility specialist, I can guarantee you by just looking at them that they potentially have PCOS. Some of the things that people visualize and can see are symptoms of high male hormones, like male pattern baldness when they start to lose hair in the fronts. Other people have acne. Like a lot of acne. Other people get hair growth on places where women shouldn't normally, like the chin, on their chest, around their nipples, on their abdomen. And in some cultures, it's normal to have that to an extent, but generally speaking for women, those areas are bothersome and worrisome. Like the area that we don't assess is the mustache area for women, because many cultures, women have more hair there and it's actually rather normal. So these are things, along with having an irregular cycle, along with darkening of the area like around the neck, under the axilla, which is the armpit, under the breast, the inner thighs. Those darkening areas also tell us that you may have an insulin resistance problem that is also the major underlying problem that goes along with polycystic ovary syndrome. So again, knowledge is power. Knowing those things, and there are things you can do to improve, is really, really important. Rachel, you said something that no one has said to me ever before. I'm going to start keeping a list of the things that you say, but that I love. That's like, this is going to be now the second thing. It's important in your 20s to maybe assess where you are in your fertility, or think in your head what your goals are, because if it means you need to put aside $100 a month, that when you hit 30, you have to do your egg freezing, or you need to plan ahead, or look for an employer that covers fertility coverage and egg freezing. These are really important things. No one has ever said that, by the way, to start thinking about the financial obligations you have to yourself as a woman, knowing that you're on a different timeline than a man, and that you may have to do a procedure that's more expensive, such as egg freezing, at an earlier age, and taking that into consideration.
Exactly. I feel so passionately about this because it breaks my heart. Obviously, it breaks my heart when I hear of anyone having a difficult path to parenthood, but it particularly breaks my heart as well when money is an obstacle. When it's deciding we've tried, 2 rounds, we can't really afford a third, or whatever it may be. The money piece of things that just absolutely breaks my heart, that could be a barrier to starting a family. I get so emotional, like tear up, but again, everything with planning, like you said, $100 a month, you wouldn't even notice that, or you give up going out for dinner, once or twice a month, or you sacrifice a vacation. These are all choices that you could make. And then when you come to make that decision, it's not a stress. It's like, cool, I've planned for this, and the money's there and it's saving. Or like you even said, some employers cover it, which is amazing. One of my friends is in that scenario. I'm like, wow.
It's getting better and better. I'm like, the one thing I'm really proud of is the fact that it's getting better and better. And luckily, a lot of the employers where a younger woman may work, such as tech industry, Google, Snapchat, Apple, all of these places that Disney, places where younger women may work, actually I've been finding that have much better coverage. So that's actually a great thing to know and something to consider when you look between jobs and you're thinking, I know that some of the employers that I just named, they have a program called Carrot or Progeny. Some of them have up to $75,000 of fertility coverage, which can just change your life in terms of the treatment you're allowed to do and you can't do. So that's
so incredible. That's
unbelievable.
You could start if you're in your early 20s, you could start interning at one of those companies.
Exactly.
Work your way in. Yeah, that's amazing.
I don't want to ignore the fact that we do have lots of finance options for patients that are actually ready to do this and may have some restrictions. We have financing options that bring it down to like about $160 or $170 a month. It just depends on your credit. I always put this, there's a post that we put on my Instagram page, which shows, you could be going to dinner or you could be freezing your eggs this month. So it's a funny thing to think about, but it's sad that those things do make a difference in the long run.
And that's amazing. I didn't even know that about you. And that's so it's more we need to spread.
Yeah, a big message that we need to spread. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is I didn't know you were having another boy. So congratulations. Your son's going to have his best friend built in to the family, his little brother, which is going to be great. How far apart are they going to be?
They'll be 2 years and 4 months.
2 years and 4. And my sister and I are 2 years and 2 months apart, and we are so close. So that's amazing. Good. 2 years and 4 months is amazing.
Good. I'm so happy. Yeah. I always wanted kids close in age. I was an only child, so I feel like a sibling is such a gift. And yeah,
it's such a gift. And I only have one sister, and I promised myself that I'm going to make sure that my kids have more siblings. So we have 4 and we're happy. It's a handful, but they always are entertained with each other, whether it's entertaining or fighting, or they're occupied, let's put it that way. But they're always doing something, and it's not a quiet household in any way. Do you think that you're going to want to have a little girl?
I would love a little girl. So I went into this pregnancy in the best possible position because I was like, I'm equally happy if I have a girl or a boy. I love the idea of 2 little boys. I think I manifested a little too hard on like Princess Diana and her like baby pics and was like, I just love that, like 2 little boys. It's cute. But of course, everyone wants their little girl if they didn't have one. But I was in a good headspace because I was like, I want 3 or 4 kids. So it's fine either way. I'll either have my girl now or I'll have her later. But then I've been so ill that I sadly think this might be my last pregnancy. I don't think I have it in me again.
Well, that's why I did the biggest mistake ever and ask a pregnant woman if she's having another child. Yeah, so let's, I may even have to have this edited out of the podcast. Okay.
Like, don't hold it against me. But
it's like asking a woman in the hospital after she delivered, are you going to have another kid? The answer is going to be 100% no. But there's something like there's an amnesia factor that comes into play where people forget how difficult delivery is and it just passes, and how difficult the pregnancy could have been, and move on from there.
1,000%. In fact, my husband actually asked me to sign something so that I wouldn't forget what I just said. He's like,
"Oh my God,
sign this document that's like true," because you are gonna forget. And and for me, as I said, this is the hardest part. After, at least with my first pregnancy, I feel like you get lucky in some areas and unlucky in some areas. Sort of like you got a luck balance, and so. Whilst I get this horrendous nausea, the rest of my pregnancy was super easy. And mentally, whilst I had last time a bit of anxiety and depression while I was pregnant, afterwards I was like on cloud 9. So
Rachel, you're always on cloud 9, by the way. And that's one of the things that I think everyone loves to be around you, and you're just one of those people that's always on cloud 9. Like, I talk to you and I get energized. And I have some people, sadly, in the world that I've talked to, and I'm like, okay, I need to take a nap right now or go hide myself from the world because they just suck the energy out of you. I want to talk a little bit about what you do, and I completely just unrelated to fertility, how you balance your unbelievable job that is so exciting and so at the edge of like where the world is, and being a mom and being an unbelievable wife and social and fun. She's been over for dinner. I didn't want her to leave. I want you to kind of talk about a little bit how you balance all of this and how you do this all. And I want you to be like an inspiration for a mom that's like now struggling in the time that's hard. Like, please tell us a little bit about your secrets.
Okay, I'll do my best. Firstly, I think it's like you can't be harsh on yourself, and also realize this idea of having it all, it's a bit of a myth. You have a bit of everything, and you have a bit of seasons in your life as well, where it's like, again, you might be in a phase with a toddler or a newborn or whatever. It's okay to like have that be your focus. So I'd firstly say, like, I took a really proper maternity leave. I actually, my company gave 4 months off. And during that 4 months, I worked so hard during my pregnancy. Like, I was literally in the office till basically the minute I gave birth. But I did that to set my team up and set myself up to basically switch off my email and phone for 4 months. And that was so incredible. I had the most wonderful time. I really bonded with my son. My husband also took the time off. We'd never spent that much time together, And then I think what that allowed me is to go back to work with renewed energy and a lot of clarity, and happiness and peace around that. I wasn't like rushing myself. I had the time that I needed. So that was the first thing. And then I would say, like, secondly, it's truly about building a team. So I struggled at first a little bit because part of my job is so social. And after having a baby, I was like a little bit less inclined to, be going to events, kikiing with like 19-year-old girls who had a like completely different life to me. And like, whilst before having a baby, I could chat to anyone and I'm happy to go anywhere. And then I had my baby. I was like, I just want to be home with my baby. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be here and I can't relate to you as well. So I had a mini crisis with that. And then I thought, like, no, I'm going to double down and strengthen my relationships with other moms. Like, so many influencers obviously are moms now, and we have so much to talk about, and those are real friendships. And then I'm going to sort of let the newer generation come in and like start to forge those relationships. Like with the TikTok generation, I can help my team from a strategic standpoint on how to build those relationships. And we come up with how to work on strategies. But, I'm going to leave it to them to be going out for drinks and dinners when we're allowed to again, and kikiing every night with other 19-year-olds. Yeah, I don't know. What else can I say?
What about support at home?
Oh, yeah, that's the biggest thing. And that's the other thing that you have to realize. If you see influencers or you see other people, like, don't compare yourself to other people, particularly because you have no idea how much support they have. So I'm super lucky that my partner's really involved and supportive, and I have a nanny. Not full time. I had my nanny only the hours that I'm working, which, we have no family in America, and it's been a pandemic, obviously. So I feel like it's hard to not have any support outside of like pretty much when I'm working. I don't really just have her here if I feel like, lazing about. But you never know what support. Some people have incredible mothers and mothers-in-laws. Some people have mother-in-laws and mothers who are a total pain in the ass and don't help at all. Some people have 24-hour-a-day nannies, night nurses, etc. Help is the most important and wonderful thing. Get as much of it as you can. Ask your friends. I never really asked for help that first newborn phase. Like, people would come over and we'd have coffee, and I almost felt like I was entertaining them. And this time around, I'm going to be like, hey, can you come around and like bring food and just like hold my baby for an hour so I can just have a nap and have a shower? And if it's another parent, they'll get it and they'll help.
And believe me, when you have two little kids around, a baby and a toddler, you're going to need to ask and do it the right way, or else it's going to become very challenging. I don't think there's anything wrong of asking friends, if you don't have family around, really friends, or if you have family around, to ask family. that you're going to need help. In many, many cultures around the world, the first 40 days that you deliver, you don't do anything. Your family does everything for you, and your support system does everything for you. Your only job is to breastfeed your child and nothing more.
Which honestly is absolutely how it should be.
Yeah. And
I remember,
there's a reason why, just physiologically, I think it's necessary as well, because if you don't rest, you don't have breast milk.
1,000%. And I remember both my parents and my in-laws came over when our baby was 3 weeks old. They'll never hear this, so whatever. They were like expecting me to wait on them. I think just like whatever it was culturally or whatever, they were not prepped to help out. And I lost my shit at one point. Sorry if I'm to say shit, but at one point I lost my shit because I had a C-section. So even 3 weeks out, like I'm still in pain. I'm not like super like mobile. And I had cooked dinner and they watched as I cleaned up the plates. And I was just like, no, like this isn't going to work. But I think it's equally sort of important to talk about because I know actually a lot of friends who maybe expected their parents to be one way and it didn't work out that way. But the biggest advice I would have is to be really specific. When you're asking for help, I think everyone wants to help you. They just don't always know how, or they don't know what the expectations are. Even with friends, if you say something as simple as like, can you please come over for 2 hours and play with my toddler while I, or hold my baby, and can you bring food, and I want to take a nap and a shower. Like your friends are definitely going to say yes, but if you don't give them that specific thing, then they won't really know how.
That's really smart. That's really, really smart. And I bet your family coming from another country here, I bet they just didn't know exactly what you needed. And maybe they were like, it's an unbelievable holiday to go to the USA and see your new grandson and, be like fed and taken care of on holiday. Versus a woman that had a C-section with stitches and multiple layers of her body going into her organ systems, who are in pain and who does not want to be washing the dishes right now.
Exactly, 1,000%. And look, I think they're a bit out of their element, like they can't drive here and whatnot. But that comes to the other thing of just, asking for help and setting boundaries postpartum as well. Like in next time, if they are allowed to travel, I don't know, I'm due in September, so probably not. But next time, even I'll say like, just wait a little bit longer before coming over because I just want to heal, and you'll probably get more out of me and the baby after a few more weeks,
That's really smart. I love that idea. And again, we're lucky that we have family around and not everyone does. And finding friends, finding neighbors, finding people that you really trust and having them there and having clean and true, just straightforward expectations if you're going to ask for something is great. Now, for those people that are listening, offer your help. So if it's not you having the kid, offer your help because someone around you is going to probably need it, and it'll mean the world to them if you care about them.
I agree. I saw somewhere, probably on Instagram, I learned a lot of things there. The advice was as well, just as I said, be specific with your asks. When you're offering, try to be specific. So instead of saying, hey, what can I do to help? Say, I'm bringing around dinner. Do you like chicken or fish? Like I agree, like help. And that's the amazing thing about parents. They always want to help, even if they're not a friend. Like I've seen like people on airplanes who are like, someone has a screaming baby and another parent's just like, give me that baby. Like you have too much to deal with, like something changes in you when you become a parent, and you are just like this tribe that really wants to help other parents.
Or the poor woman on the airplane that needs to go to the bathroom and has a kid and has no one to give the kid to. I've seen when people help, and I see it's such a beautiful thing to be able to do that. So God, this is great. This is so fun. Is there for anyone who's going to be an expectant mom, what is the one final piece of amazing advice that you could give them while pregnant? Assuming that they feel okay. Is it preparing the room? Is it preparing your help? Is it preparing your house? Is it getting your job in order?
I would say educating yourself. So I really think like the problem is there's so much information out there maybe if you take one, and you can take anything, right? You have to learn a million things when you have a kid. Like, it's not just, I expected like you go to the hospital and they just teach you like, here you go, like here's everything you need to do for your baby. But like, A, you're exhausted at that point and not coherent, and B, like that only gets you through a little bit. This baby is changing all the time. Like, the baby that you have that's 1 week old is completely different to your 6-week-old baby, etc. So I think what's really nice when you're expecting, you have a little bit more time to like line up your resources and sort of educate yourself on things that would be coming down the track. You don't even need to, I think the way that humans learn, we sort of learn what is immediately in front of us. So I don't recommend reading a book about potty training when you're pregnant per se, but it could be the time that you research the different approaches on, and maybe potty training is a little further away, but even something that creeps up on you is like introducing solids at 6 months. Like, that just creeps up on you. So you don't need to necessarily learn about it, but you could be like, okay, here's like the book that I'm going to go to when the time's right. Just sort of using that time to educate yourself and set yourself up for success, because there's just a lot to learn.
You know, one of the things that I recommended to a lot of my patients after learning how beneficial it was for my wife, there, for example, for those people that live in Los Angeles, there's a class called Baby's First Class. It prepares the mom from the time that they are pregnant, and has some classes beforehand. And once you deliver, as soon as I think you're about 3 months pregnant, you take your baby with you to that class. Everyone in the class is in the same time period of delivery. So everyone's having the same issues at the same exact time. This class has been amazing. Jackie Rosenberg teaches this class in Los Angeles and is unbelievable. And I think people should look for classes like this. But one thing I do want to say is that you don't have to know everything either. Like, right when you deliver, you have to learn how to change a diaper. If you're going to breastfeed, how to breastfeed or bottle feed, and then how to bathe your kid and put your kid to sleep. And that's pretty much like, those are the signals that you need to know. And somehow, little by little, everyone figures it out. You know, it comes in like, if they told you had to know everything about, like, from 0 to 3 years, the day the kid's born, you're dead. No, but I think that little transition, of just needing to do it. And also, like, in this day and age, I remember, a lot of people I know, they bought a million things for the kid. You don't need anything. Don't buy a million things. That's the best piece of advice I can give. You don't need that much when a baby is born. You need the simplest, easiest things. I'm going to let you say what you need, but it's so simple.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, yeah, I completely agree with you. You can't learn everything, and that I wasn't stressing up. But what I do think is you need to have your sort of resources lined up. Like the example of breastfeeding, so many people will wait till they have issues, and you've got to get on that straight away. Like, if you are in the hospital day one, I have a friend who's texting me like she's not even 12 hours past delivery right now. I'm like, how are you? She's like, good, but my nipples are bleeding. I'm like, okay, we have to get you a lactation consultant straight away. So I think it's more, preparing your resources should you need them. So
yes, of course. Be prepared is always a better scenario. Being prepared in everything.
Hopefully you don't need it, but like you've got that, you know where to turn if you do, because often you got to come up with a solution quickly. And then, I guess it's just for me that education was the biggest struggle piece for me, especially going back to work. I would go to work all day. I'd feel like an absolute boss. I would come home. I would come home, hurry my ass home in time to do bath time and bedtime, put my son down. It's like 7 p.m. Obviously at that point I'm still breastfeeding and my kid's not necessarily sleeping through the night. So I'm physically exhausted, flopping down on my bed at 7 p.m. And then feeling like I had a whole evening of research ahead of me was like very daunting. Like I had this whole extra job on top of me. And so, to sort of help, and it made me feel sort of lacking in confidence and a bit overwhelmed. And so I didn't want other parents to go through that. So I'm developing this platform, which we've talked about briefly. I paused it a minute because I've been so ill, but starting back up again. I'm starting in a platform that's essentially going to be masterclass for pregnancy and parenting. We'll have you come on, you'll teach a class, but the idea being that if you need to come and learn the basics of egg freezing or the basics of introducing solids or whatnot, you can come on, spend an hour, watch this class, take a class from someone super, super respected like yourself or Jackie, who you mentioned, just knowing like you're getting a no bullshit, straight to the point answer on the basics. If you want to go off from there and read listen to podcasts and read books, like great, do that. But you've got the kind of basics down. And yeah.
By the way, I've told you this before and I'll say it again. I think that's such a brilliant idea. And I cannot wait till you are out with it and ready to launch that, because it is going to be amazing.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I just truly I need it, and I need it to help other parents. I don't want anyone having that same feeling of just feeling like overwhelmed and shitty and like, ugh, yuck. No, we don't need that. The information is out there. We just have to make it, more digestible and easy for busy parents. So,
and I know you're going to do an amazing job at it. And I think if people haven't noticed listening, Rachel's amazing. And she says amazing things. I've already written down so many of them. She is going to have an amazing company. I knew she was going to. She already works amazingly, and she's lovely. And I'm so happy that you joined me today. I wish you anti-nausea as soon as you can. Okay. So please text me the morning you feel better so I can feel good for you. I'm sending you lots of love. I'm thanking you for being with me this time. And I love always talking to you. You're just, as I said earlier, just so much good energy coming from you all the time. I'm going to put a little note. If I'm ever in a bad mood, call Rachel. So that's what I'm going to do. Put a note, a reminder to self on my notes sheet of my phone. But thank you very much for joining us. And I wish you the most beautiful rest of your pregnancy with feeling much, much better, and can't wait to meet your little prince number 2.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. But also thank you for making all of this information more easily accessible and like more fun and light and dense at the same time for people. As I said, I'm just so, I think you and I both are so passionate about just opening these conversations and, removing any kind of stigma and any kind of confusion, and like, let's just get people the facts. And yeah, so thank you for what you're doing too.
And on that note, I'm going to say thank you. And I'm going to say about a year from now, we're going to do our new recording. It's going to be titled Family Balancing and Gender Selection.
Right. Just let that amnesia.
I'm just going to put a reminder to self, and I'm going to put a reminder now for 1 year from today. Call Rachel to do the new podcast called Gender Selection Family Balancing.
Perfect. We'll get my little girl.
Anyways, Rachel, thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening today. If you've enjoyed listening, please feel free to write a review. Also, feel free to follow my Instagram at Dr. Shaheen Ghadir and message me if you need help setting up a consultation. Look forward to speaking to you soon.